to share what we're doing with everyone. So again, my name is Mark Reyes. I'm the Senior Vice President for Program Impact here at the Urban League of Broward County. Been with the Urban League for over 12 years. And probably similar to many of you all, my role is overseeing our programs. And so data and the headaches that come with data management is really something that I think about a lot. And hopefully for us and for you all, Kairos IMS is a potential solution to that. I do want to let my co-host also introduce myself, so I'll pass it over to Kayla to introduce herself.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name's Kayla Burke, and I am currently dealing with everything go-to-market and sales for Cairo. So this has been such an exciting journey. I've spent about 10 years in the software space, and my primary focus is to really help, technical organizations with being able to operationalize, think about, hey, how do we use technology to improve our processes and keep driving more revenue or keep doing different things along the different lines as it relates to all different areas within the organization. So it has been an amazing journey. Kairos is a really, really cool product to me. And I love what Urban League has been able to do to be able to build it and connect with other affiliates thus far. So really excited to go on this journey and keep on helping more urban leagues and more nonprofits across the nation to be able to really operationalize those processes internally. I'm going to throw it over to Siobhan.
Hi, thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Mark. As they mentioned, so I work closely with the leadership at the Urban League of Broward County and Kayla. So really helping bring people on with sales and also customer success. So helping our clients move in from implementation and really getting onboarded and making sure that the platform fits exactly their needs and doing any data mapping strategy and anything related to that. So really happy to talk through a lot of what the system can do and be able to, towards the end, even be able to book a demo with you all and get into more specifics of what you need in the future.
Great. Thank you so much, Kayla and Siobhan. So just for folks, as we little housewarming, so we will be on for about an hour. The chat is available. So if you do have any questions or comments, feel free to post them in the chat. As we're going through, we may answer some of them while we're presenting, or we may wait to the end to get to some of those. But hopefully we'll be able to answer all your questions. And if there isn't anything that we're able to answer at this point, we'll make sure that we follow up with you and get your questions answered. But really, again, happy. We have now 27 attendees participate. Oh, we're almost at 30 now. So really, really excited, and we should get going. So as you can see, the title of our webinar today is One Platform, Fewer Headaches. And as I alluded to in the beginning, nonprofit data management is really a challenge for many of us, right? We want to be able to collect the data about the families and the individuals that we serve, really tell their story and tell the story of the impact of the great work that we all are doing across the nonprofit sector. But sometimes having the right platform is what keeps us challenging, keeps the challenge. For today's agenda, as I go through, we're going to talk a little about the data, our unified platform, which is the Kairos IMS. Siobhan will talk a little bit about Kairos. We actually won't do a live demonstration, but she'll give you some, show you some parts of Kairos. And Kayla will talk about some of our results, and then, of course, Q&A and next steps. So hopefully we'll enjoy this next hour together. And again, Happy New Year to everyone. I didn't do that as well. So our reality here at the Urban League, and again, the reality of, I think, for many nonprofit organizations is that we have a lot of disconnected systems. At one point, the Urban League counted 13 different ways that we collect data. And that was either through pen and paper, spreadsheets, online, whether it's a Google spreadsheet, Microsoft Excel, or different databases. Some of them were required by funders. Some of our programs found a database or a CRM that worked for them. But then we weren't able to connect those, right? And so it was really important for us, as we think our model of service is that we want to serve the entire family. And in doing that, then how can we have disconnected systems if we want to talk about all the ways that we're serving a family. So for example, at the Urban League, we have 18 different programs. We may have a family that's participating in our financial literacy, as well as in maybe one of our health programs or our housing program. And yet each of those programs will have their own case file and case record, and it's not connected, right? So how do we know all the great impact and all the great work that's happening with this one individual family, and ultimately tell the story of that family's great success and all the great things that have come to fruition for that family through the work of the Urban League and through their hard work as well, right? So again, nonprofits are juggling 3 to 5 case management tools, whether it's pen and paper or digital tool, electronic tool, each one living in its own silo and really not talking to each other. And that creates a problem that drains our time, drains our energy, especially as we're trying to understand, what's happening with an individual family or an individual, and ultimately wanting to tell the true story of the great work that we're all doing. So in doing that, right, I think one of it is if we're a client-centered organization, what we now see, if a client is receiving multiple services, they could be creating and filling out multiple intake forms, multiple applications, because each of those departments has their own client record. And again, many of these things are required by our funders, right? They want to come and do an audit and a monitoring. They want to see the client record. And we have individual client records for each of those with potentially, individual intakes and assessments. So wanting to really condense that into make it client focused, right? Client centered, which means a singular intake, for that client. We also want to be able to do some reporting and be able to report apples to apples. I can tell you, I've had a grant in the past that funded 2 different divisions, which had 2 different software systems, right? And so I had to go to each of those, get their information, and make sure that they were apples to apples. And that took up a lot of time, a lot of energy, just making sure that we're reporting accurate information about our programs and that it is comparable to each other, right? That we're doing apples to apples. And lastly, we want to have that, truth, right? Who our program is, who we're serving, the number of individuals that we're serving, and the great impact that we're having, and the great progress and towards resiliency that we see all of our families moving toward in their journey, working with the Urban League and with other nonprofits across the country. So it's really important for us to figure out how we can have that full picture of a client progress across different domains and across different programming that they may be participating in. So as I talk, the hidden costs add up really fast, right? So staff burnout, all the time that we're spending on data entry, not doing client services. And so we really wanted to figure out how we can streamline that process. Inaccurate data, as I mentioned, having to scrub the data to make sure that we're looking at apples to apples, right? So as we're thinking about a family, I can even tell you one system asks for a birth date, while another system asks for an age, right? And so as we move dates and change years, the age changes, but because it's a hard manual number, it doesn't get updated. While the birthday, we can calculate the date, the age at a particular point in time, right? So then that results in errors, which again, undermine decision-making, undermine a little bit of our credibility. It makes it a challenge for us to really making sure that are these individuals eligible? How long have they been with us and the like. I think it also, challenges us around funding. Funding is really important for all of us in the nonprofit sector. That's how we're able to provide our services. We have a motto here at the Urban League: no money, no mission, right? And so to be able to get that money, we have to be able to talk about what our programs do, how many people we're serving, and what the kind of impact that we're having on the families that we're serving. And so not having a clear system and the ability to really get that data out of a system was a challenge for us. And is a challenge for many nonprofits that we serve, that we work with. And then compliance, right? As incomplete or inconsistent records puts us at risk for audits and reviews. And it's really important, as we all know, many funders will come and do program monitorings or program audits to review the case files, make sure that you're doing quality work and that it's matching up with the data that we may be submitting through their invoicing or the like. And we want to make sure that, the correct eligibility of our clients and the like. And so all of those are at risk, I think, when we have multiple systems. Again, managing for us, it was at one point 13 different systems, became a little bit of a nightmare. So I bet this sounds familiar. I'd love to see if folks have, put in their chat their experience, if that sounds very similar, or even how many different systems that they're currently using. I'd love to see that as well. So you are not alone. These challenges are the norm for nonprofits still using fragmented systems. And what that did was that led us to the creation of Kairos IMS Impact Management System. Um, this is a partnership that it's been in development over the last couple of years. We were lucky enough to get funding to develop a relationship with Microsoft. It was a programmatic relationship for workforce, funded through Microsoft, and that opened up some really great channels for us. And we were able to have some discussions with Microsoft on what our needs were and what our challenges were. And they came to the table and helped us to think through how we can solve this problem. There are other case management systems out in the universe, as we all know. We actually met with some of them and did some demos with them to learn about their systems. And one challenge that got me was in moving to the next step, it was going to cost us a large sum of money to do quote unquote discovery, right? And that's not even to get the system set up. And when we realized in doing some of these demos that the systems that were there, to get to what we wanted to do, which really that family-centric service, unifying programs, making sure that our data was right, the system wasn't there, but without some great customization, which was going to cost us even more money. And so we were able to get an investment. We had a great partner that we knew locally, that our CEO knew, and we were able to develop a great partnership and work toward developing Kairos. And once we developed Kairos and see the great things that it can do, we really wanted to share it in the market. We thought it is a great opportunity to help other nonprofits solve some of their data management challenges. Kayla, I believe this is you.
Awesome. Yeah, and so just to back what Mark was saying, I've been in the technology space, like I said, over a decade now. I've sold at Microsoft, IBM, startups, cybersecurity. So I've seen the transformation that a lot of organizations go through time and time again, and what's important to think through. And I think one of the things that makes Kairos really unique to me is that it's built for they like to say for us by us, right? Like, FUBU, right? So, why that's really cool to me is because a lot of times when you're going in and developing a product, right, you're wanting to think about how does this impact the person that's going to be using this every day? And what was really unique was that, Urban League was able to say, hey, let's work with Microsoft to really figure out how we can deliver this not only for ourselves but to everyone else on that scale. But what does that take? That takes us sitting down as a team consistently, talking to nonprofits, being able to do interviews with different, personas at these different nonprofits, and we're able to see the patterns that are represented across different industries of nonprofits, different individuals working top to bottom, from your CEOs to your program or case managers, things of that nature. And we're seeing the consistent patterns. And really, the biggest disconnect is the fragmented data. So, a really great example is, we've been working to onboard some urban leagues across the country now. And something that we consistently saw during this process was, hey, we have different funders requesting different platforms that we need to utilize. So maybe one funder wants us to have a CRM and somebody else wants us to have another tool. And what's happening is you're having this duplication of clients, not only in different programs, different CRMs, but there's no interconnectivity there to really connect these platforms. And the biggest disconnect is, hey, when you cannot see your data in one visible place, right? What does that do? It leads to data being duplicated. It leads to the quality of your data going down. And most importantly, it leads to bad decision-making processes because you don't have the insight and visibility over your organization to really make um, data-backed decisions. So what we've been able to see is that when we think about a unified platform, we're not saying, hey, this case management tool is going to be able to replace everything under the sun. But what Kairos has been specifically designed to do is take either an organization who is manual, still on Excel sheets, or has absolutely no program, and bring in that automation for you, or for organizations who are operating under those different programs and tools to be able to give you a centralized, unified platform that then will be able to connect and flow all of the different data that you're getting across different clients and programs to have a centralized view to tell a better story with your organization. So we think about the one client profile access across programs. A big issue that Mark was, just mentioning is, hey, you have one client who comes in, but you're entering them in different systems. How do you get the visibility? How do you track the impact of what this client is doing, not only over time, but in each individual program they may be engaging with within your organization, right? We then are able to also create a structured workflow, which is really important. Imagine if you have leadership change, people who leave roles. Sometimes when things are done on Excel sheets or this or that, the access may be an issue when someone leaves. We just spoke with an Urban League affiliate down here in South Florida, and she said she's a new CEO, and her biggest problem to this day is that all the people before her, it's just everywhere, right? So, like, imagine stepping into an organization, there's not any data mapping, there's not an availability to people who probably had access, maybe did it in their style, wrote it with their tone of note, different things of that nature. And there wasn't a standardized workflow. So, we also want to empower organizations to not only own their data, but understand that the data is the most powerful asset within your organization, and you have to take ownership of that. So what do we do? How do we walk with customers and think about the data mapping process? Think about compliance. Think about all of the different aspects that really help you to steward your data in a more effective way to get better business insights for your organization. And so having one place to track these outcomes obviously is a stress relief, you know what I mean? Not having to go and maybe pull all these different programs, then have different meetings and say, hey, we're trying to pull this from this place and that place, but having one centralized place of truth within your organization that's consistently evergreen on these profiles and these clients, as well as these programs. And then having a secure system. It is 2026. We all know how important it is for our data to be protected, how important it is right now for everything to be secure. And I think that a lot of thought went into, is this child data? Is this a field that needs to be being able to be maybe modified so everybody doesn't have access to see it when they access the program record or the client record, right? Being able to think through these features on the tool was really, really a strong point in Kairos, like I said, being built for us, by us, and really being able to connect with those deep issues that we are seeing and the patterns across nonprofits. Next slide. And so, I mean, the major thing that makes it different is I don't know another nonprofit that on the market that has decided, hey, we're going to solve a problem, and we're not only going to solve it for ourselves, but we're actually going to go to market and help other people solve it. I don't know any tool on the market like that. Maybe I'm just, sleeping under a rock here or something. But I think that's what makes Kairos unique, right? When we think about most products that are built by technology companies, they're built by the technology companies. They're not built by the people who actually have dealt with the issue. And this is what makes the product super unique. This is what's made the customers that have decided to join us on this journey say, hey, this makes sense. You guys understand our problems. And we're also able to think about costs, like Mark was saying, right? When we think about major players in the game, like your Salesforces or these huge organizations, there is a different type of cost associated with the lift. And something that we really, really prioritized was the affordability for nonprofits, because we understand, hey, this depends on funders. This depends on program, readiness and efficiency. How are things moving? And if we're being honest, the times that we are in right now, things are definitely a little different, right? From a federal perspective, from different perspectives, we are just being conscious in this time on how do we deliver value and affordability. So when we think about why Kairos is different, I love to think about the centralized design, the flexibility for programs, for workflows, for things like maybe you have different assessments based on the programs that you're intaking these clients into, right? And then also just co-design, like we mentioned from the beginning, being able to co-design with other urban leagues, being able to hear and get on the ground and actually do real user research with other affiliates and other nonprofits, has been such an amazing experience. So I'll pause there. Does anybody have any questions, any comments? The chat is real quiet. We just want to see how you guys are feeling. And if anybody resonates in their organization right now with maybe having fragmented systems or just the challenges they may be having around programs, I would love to hear more. But I'm gonna go ahead, and I think the next slide is gonna be Siobhan.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kayla. As she mentioned, I'd love to see in the chat how many systems you all are using today at your organization. If you can type a number in the chat, whether it's 1, 2, 5, maybe like Mark said, counting, I think up to 13, you said, Mark, or potentially more. Yes, up to 13. So would love to see in the chat how many systems today you're using to really help your clients with the programs and services that you offer. Wow,
Awesome.
systems.
Right. And how are those systems talking to each other today? 2 systems, 4 systems. Right. And does anybody have the ability where they have a centralized system today in their organization where you can see, you know what I mean, all of the clients and programs and track their impact across all of these different systems? Um, I'd love to know if somebody has figured out the answer to the problem outside of Kairos, but for the most part, yeah, we can relate to these issues, 8 systems. How do you customize the platform for a particular organization? So I'm going to let Siobhan go through these tabs, and then I'll save that question for the end. We're almost to the end of the presentation. So Marvin, I'll be able to circle back to you in a second, and Siobhan and I can talk through a little bit more about customization on the platform. But all right, Siobhan, I'll let you take it from here.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you all for letting us know how many systems that you're currently using in your organization. So at this point, we've talked a little bit about the disconnected systems and the reality of what that looks like at a high level. What I want to do now is really talk through how a unified intake and streamlined workflows can really show up in the day-to-day management of your team. So as you see here, one of the biggest challenges we kept hearing, and you heard Kayla and Mark mention, is that the idea of repetition, right? Not necessarily repetition in the work that they want to do, but the repetition in the questions that they're asking clients, right? So depending on which program someone's entered in, the staff are starting over and over again, really getting that information from the client. And one of the things, even talking to people that I know in the foster care system, right, or even other individuals, when you're going through a situation, you don't necessarily want to always tell your story over and over again. That alone can be challenging for an individual that's navigating a tough time. And as we're thinking about the communities that we're serving, that can really be a sense of or a place of truth for them that as they're navigating getting help, and maybe even just showing up and asking for help is really difficult. So as we think about simplified intake, as we've mentioned thus far, with Kairos, a client comes into the system once, right? So that intake capturing comprehensive information that can support the multiple programs that you may serve, or even if it's one, right? Being able to get that information once the client comes in, instead of, like, as I mentioned, starting over every time a client needs to be expanded. So whether that client touches one program or multiple, the foundation is there. And then when we think about real-time program data, for leadership, this is where the conversation changes, right? So instead of waiting for reports or you're seeing program, you're really being able to see that program activity and progress in snapshots. So if you see right over in the right-hand side, that is just, hey, the amount of open cases, pending cases, and the percent completion towards any goals and units that you have in your organization and across your various programs. So this means fewer surprises and better informed decisions along the way, just as Kayla was describing. And then for complete client history, when I talk to the customers, I love to say, this is more than just a digital file or a digital client history, but you're able to see all of this information in one place. So one single centralized client record, you're able to see name, address, all these different items. And then program staff and leaders can also see the full picture. So any of their intake forms, and I'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide as well. So not just what's happening across the one program, but now the client is engaging across the organization over time. And you're still able to go back and click in the different intakes and really see what was already captured. If there was, for example, a funder specifically wants you to ask a certain amount of questions, right? As we're having to navigate not only the information that we would like, but the information the funder would like, so funders would like. So having that all in one place and not having to, look at multiple places. And as Kayla talked about earlier, the secure permissions that are inside of Kairos. So having staff see what you want them to see and the ability to really tailor that, whether you want just maybe an intake person to just manage intake, or someone's just managing program coordination, right? And maybe helping assign cases to case managers, and perhaps even the division managers or other department leaders being able to see everything. And also if someone's out for vacation, or someone leaves, still the ability to see any notes and different things that have happened while that person was working with that client. Next slide, please. So we're no longer asking for clients for the same information multiple times. And for staff, we're not hunting through disconnected systems to find what they need. So when we're thinking about those streamlined case management workflows, once the client is in the system, the next challenge becomes the consistency, right? So especially across various teams and programs, inevitably staff changes, right? We have people maybe going out on maternity leave, vacation, just turnover in general, right? So the ability to set up a streamlined workflow or tasks that need to happen across a program that can guide case managers through consistent processes. You also have built-in reminders for task management that can help support day-to-day work without staff having to remember and rely on memory of these of side notes and things like that. So when we're thinking of structured workflows, once the client is in the system, you're also able to send a direct link to them to fill out any program intake forms. If that's different from any demographic and other types of information we're asking in the beginning, and you need to send something out or have them sign a form, the ability to do that right inside of Kairos and have that come back to the system is amazing. So for program setup, right, we understand that no two organizations are structured in the same way. Even across the Urban League affiliates, we see this, right? So different people are having the ability to say, well, maybe, one service is a set of services, that one service a certain programs, but the other affiliate doesn't. But just having the ability to set up any divisions, departments, and programs in the way that your organization thinks of this, right? So these categories are configured to reflect how your organization actually operates. So the system basically adapting to your structure and not the other way around. And also being able to, in this case management workflow, look at it and think of it as a case management and not necessarily just a CRM where you're trying to put these big Lego blocks or these things that don't really fit together when you're thinking of servicing the people in the community. Then as far as real-time visibility, right, those snapshots that we talked about and having the live dashboards to look at caseloads, right? Managers can even see in the system how many cases are distributed across their team. So they can see if you have a team of 5, maybe someone has 15 or 10, or just really being able to look at your team and say, okay, well, maybe there needs to be some distribution load just distributed differently across the team. You can go to the next slide. So what this really creates is basically a continuity, right? So even when staff or leadership changes, the process being the same. As I talked about, having the ability to set specific set of tasks, whether it's monthly, daily, quarterly, that your team has to adhere to across programs so that you're delivering that program with continuity. So as far as real-time program data and leadership visibility, at this point, it's important to really think about level setting on. We're not necessarily talking about every single report that Kairos can generate, but the ability to have a centralized program data that supports whether it's your funders, the boards, internal leadership, and then having it all come from the same source of truth. So thinking about, we had someone say that there's 8 systems that they're managing. Imagine, pulling information from all of these different systems to now create one report. That's very difficult, right? And that's time consuming and also frustrating. And so having the staff that are supporting you and helping you get to this these organization mission, and grabbing all of that information can really just be frustrating overall. So as we're thinking about standardized and structured data, when you're having all that information across your programs in one place, something important happens. And what that is being able to respond to reporting faster and far less stressful, as I was discussing earlier, because you're not necessarily just reconciling different versions of truth in the different systems that you have. There's also role-based views for leaders, so they can really look at program activity across, the appropriate role-based views, whether it's, across one program, one division, and the various programs in that division, and being able to configure that. So seeing what's important for decision making without wading through maybe any unnecessary details that are there. If it doesn't apply to, if you're a department leader and the other department doesn't necessarily apply to you. So what's also great is being able to have that consistent definitions across programs, right? So which makes it easier to compare impact when you're level setting, hey, these are maybe the ethnicities, the race, the genders that we're bringing in, and being able to tell that story across the board for your organization and tell that story to the different funders or even community leaders that you're working with. So you can go to the next slide. One thing that I wanted to touch on before we get to the real world impact is just the ability to take and export that data and to be able to have that centralized information, that is not just the starting point. So really able to get better insight, better decisions, as Kayla was talking about, through that stronger data governance and not just reporting. Awesome, Kayla, I believe, is this Kayla and Mark?
Sending it back over to Mark.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I wanted to give one quick example. So the doula program is a program here at the Urban League that works with expectant moms and families with young children, really making sure that we're having healthy and safe pregnancies and raising healthy babies and having healthy families. And one of our programs, our doula program, as you can see in the quote here, went from drowning in spreadsheets and paper charts to having real-time visibility across their program. So they serve upwards of 70 families at any one time across 3 different staff members. And for the coordinator to be able to see what's happening in real time by going into Kairos, looking at a family and reading the case notes, seeing the assessment, seeing the, we're required to do, once the baby is born, for example, we have different milestones called ASQs. Folks may know about those, which is age, sex questionnaires. We do them at 2 months, 4 months, and ongoing with it to make sure that our young babies are reaching their milestones. So we're able to actually have that in Kairos. And so the program coordinator can take a look at that. And again, it's a helpful for quality assurance. If, for example, someone is not a child is not reaching a milestone, making sure that we're providing the appropriate referral to services for that child. And then the great thing too, right, is that, for many of our families that we serve, they may be in need of additional services outside of the doula program. So then we're able to see what other program that family is also participating in and help to make sure that the care that we're providing to the family is really coordinated, right? So that's really important for us. So this program, which is a newer program in the Urban League, just about 3 years old, had no system, so went from manual. So they were using paper and Excel, to keep track of everything that's happening with their families. So they moved from paper and Excel to Kairos. So now all their data is, again, centralized, and we're able to report on that. So we actually have a report that we submit monthly to one of our funders. And so they're able to report on all the services that they're providing to these families easily now through Kairos.
Awesome. And so that is really our presentation for today, but I'm really excited to be able to hop over to the chat and just really walk through some of the questions. We definitely get these questions a lot, so this is exciting to see that once again, there's consistencies across all organizations in this space right now. We're gonna just hop into the questions in the chat really quickly here. So the first question that I see is from Marvin, and it says, "How do you customize the platform for a particular organization?" Siobhan, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I can take this one.
Awesome.
So depending on the level of customization that's needed, so if we think about from a program level, the system can really create those custom forms that are needed to be sent out to clients. And as I mentioned, it's really configurable. So even if you wanted to change nomenclature in the system, you can do that, right? There's a place where if you don't want to call it intakes, but you're calling it something else, if you don't want to call them clients, you can also change that. There's a lot of different ways that you can configure Kairos for your needs without having to work with our engineer and technical team to do any deep customization. Now, if that is needed, we would do as typical, right? Have really discovery and get those requirements listed and just talk with you and make sure that we have that outlined and work with our team to get that done and just come up with um, whatever is needed to make that happen. So that's how we would manage that, just looking at your needs and come up with a request and requirements guidelines for that. And then I think the next question is,
Do you want to see if he has any comments or follow-up questions before we hop in? Marvin, did that answer your question?
okay, so where does the client data? Okay, perfect. Glad that it answered it. So the client data does live inside of Kairos, and it's basically the platform is backed by Azure, so it is in the cloud, and with the you know various security parameters that exist within Azure. So that is where the client data lives. There is the ability to export data from every piece of the platform. Um, there's a button that says export data. We are working to have a one full export button across everything, but across the different, program intakes and different items, there is the ability to export your data at any time that you want. So you don't have to, as some systems say, oh, well, once you click on this button, now you have to like pay or something like that. No, within Kairos, you have the ability to export it as you would like.
Awesome. And so I see Teresa was saying, Teresa, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Sorry about that. But we tried to customize a unified platform using HubSpot, which allows for syncing to other platforms that we use. This was costly, time consuming, and frustrating. And yeah, that's kind of what we noticed. And there hasn't been a tool that's specifically designed just for case management that connects or talks to other systems. And we can talk about how we've been able to solve that problem here as well with being able to talk to other systems because I see that you also said some funders require data to be put into their system. Can you import data from their system? So those two questions kind of go together. And so what we have been able to do is utilize Zapier. They have 800 out of the box connections. And through that connection, we have been able to say, hey, okay, is it this system that needs to talk to this system? And you're able to connect through Zapier as that middle party to be able to have that customization as it relates to talking to other systems, such as the AI platforms or third-party platforms through APIs. We do have the availability to go through API connections as well. That is a little different. So we have two options. One would be our out of the box, which would be Zapier, because those are pre-built connectors. And if you're looking for something like an API, that would be considered a custom build. But it's on the customer, depending on the needs, depending on what they're trying to accomplish. And that's something we would have to just have a deeper discussion on to basically understand the scope of what it is you're trying to connect to. But we do have the capability to move in either direction. And one would just require an additional meeting with our product team to be able to see what that looks like and being able to scope that work out. But yeah, let me circle back up 1 second. Um, how much training and technical support do you provide a client? Oh, same question just came down. So when it comes down to training and technical support, so we have an onboarding process, and what that looks like is we are typically working with the organization to at least think through the data mapping process. We have forms that pretty much upload into the platform. So what we do is we work with your organization once you've purchased, and we do a kickoff call. We start the onboarding process, and we really talk through what does this data mapping exercise require? We're going to talk through that a lot before you decide to move forward with us as well, so you understand the lift and the resources that are required internally for you to be able to support the effort. But essentially, that's what the process looks like. So we're going to do the data mapping exercise, provide you with the tools. We also have like documents that have screenshots and, pictures that take you step by step on how you have to do everything to basically get the data. And then if you are looking to take it a step further with that Zapier connection or API custom build, obviously those are things that we have to consider in that onboarding process as well. But from the moment that you sign up, Kairos is a SaaS platform. So I just want to like reiterate that it is not something that is really at this point deployed like on premise into your cloud and all of that. It sits online. So when you think about something like a HubSpot, or when you think about any other tool that you can literally just go on the internet, log into with a login, that's how we designed Kairos to be a SaaS tool. So once you make your subscription and your purchase, you instantly are given an instance, your account is created, and you immediately have access. We typically try to gauge within 90 days or 1 quarter to be able to work with the client to go through the onboarding process so that you guys are able to utilize the data. What I would say is it's also dependent on the customer, right? Like if you guys have 5 programs versus 15 programs, obviously phasing that approach internally, thinking about how much data you have and needing to move it into the platform is going to be in a phased approach. Maybe somebody with one platform, maybe somebody who's manual and doesn't have any platforms, the time is going to vary. But we like to say on average, we're looking to have you moving your data, starting your process up and running, and being able to utilize that platform within 90 days. And that's the type of technical support that we provide. You also will be able to have a ticketing system. So you'll be able to put in tickets if for ongoing technical support as well, outside of just the initial onboarding process, Marvin. I think the last question is what type of reporting is available? And Siobhan, I'll throw that one back to you for reporting.
Yeah, thanks, Kayla. So you do have the ability to take the data out in, well, one, I showed the snapshots of the dashboard. So it does have the ability to have those charts and graphs of the caseload and where your staff is. And then there's also the ability to create essentially a report from the data that's coming in. So whether that's demographic, the program outcomes, right? So depending on the items that you place in the system, so those program outcomes that occurred. The inside of Kairos, there's also the Arizona self-sufficiency matrix that's been essentially crafted by the Urban League of Broward County that really manages the self-sufficiency of an individual across various domains. So there's also the ability to take a look at how the client is progressing through that as well, and be able to see their change in scores. So you have that as well that you're able to take a look at. And there's a few others as well. And we're also working to even generate even more reports as we are working with the customers that we have on board. But those are the ones that are currently built in. And there's 2 additional ones that are not coming to mind as well. But that's the type of reporting that's available, Teresa.
Awesome. And so, Marvin, I just want to clarify, the data is not living in Azure. The platform is built on Azure as a platform, but your data is going to live in Kairos. So you have full autonomy to be able to access your data as you need it. You have full ownership of the data. The data doesn't really like move between Azure and Kairos. And maybe if you want to articulate if I'm answering the question correctly, but you're not putting this data into the data is in Kairos, if that makes sense. What I would say is because it's hosted on a cloud platform, just like anything else, I mean, the nature of if you were to go to Microsoft today and say, hey, what are the chances of Azure going down if there was an outage? Um, yeah, it would be impacted just naturally. Like there's no system that would be um, not impacted if they utilized Azure at that time. So um, it's kind of like one of those situations right there. But the truth of the matter is like Azure really goes down. Coming from someone who used to sell at Microsoft, I would say that you can feel pretty confident that Azure isn't going to go down. I know over the past 2 years, we've seen some crazy things with like, um, different things of that nature. But yeah, it's pretty much going to be the same as if you were to have a tenant on Azure yourself and think about the data. What backups are in place to protect the data? Could you elaborate a little bit on what you mean, what backups are in place? So, as mentioned, the data is going to be stored and secured in the platform. It is hosted on Azure, which is Microsoft. So, it's the same security parameters that anybody on Microsoft Azure would have. If you want to back up your data locally, so this is what I would just recommend outside of Kairos, outside of anything. Like, so when we think about data and backing up our data, it's kind of like if you think about your iPhone, you can put the pictures on your actual iPhone or you can put the pictures on your iCloud, right? When you say you want to back up the data, so essentially, it'll be like your iPhone will prompt you and say, "Hey, can I back up my data that's on my iPhone onto an iCloud?" In this situation, your stuff's on the cloud, so if you would like your data on premise, you would have to take an additional step to secure your data in a place or a hard drive or something that is not operating, you get what I'm saying, like in a SaaS platform. So if your concern is like, how do we have hard cold storage data? You would have to put that on some type of data storage device is what I would recommend. Um, Most organizations aren't doing that. Like they aren't just really going out and getting a ton of storage devices and just backing the data up. Once again, you're getting Microsoft access to level of compliance and security with this data just by it being hosted on Azure. So most people aren't really, you know, thinking of it from that perspective. Are there any compliance issues with funders? Some funders want client information on their platforms for compliance. So that's been the challenge that we've been seeing, right? Is that although they want it on their platforms for compliance, you still should be able to, like you said, back up your data because it's your data, right? Like it's your client at the end of the day. And I think that's what we are trying to help organizations understand is that it's not that funder's data, it is the client that comes through your organization's data. So you have to take the parameters and the extra step to say, hey, where can I store this in the event I stop doing business with this funder in the future, all of your data is now on their platform and it dissipates. So the whole point of Kairos is to say, hey, we have something internally that we're going to be able to put our data on. We're going to be able to have our programs and all of our reports and things of that nature in the event that we change funders, in the event this funder tells us we need to change platforms. So it's all about data ownership. And that's really, really important. And that's what I was saying and mentioning earlier in the webinar is, hey, you guys being able to own your data is very, very important for the longevity of it. I mentioned that there was like a CEO who just came into a new urban league down here. And she was telling us like, hey, like, I came in and it's just fragmented and there's different places where the people before me didn't necessarily do something. So we think about changes in leadership. We think about changes in funders, changes in platforms, and we want to be aware of that. And that's why we're seeing Kairos as that centralized place to be able to understand that. We do know there are some things that are like state regulated and things of that nature. So if you're open, we could definitely have a meeting with you and just learn more about your organization on a deeper level to be able to specifically speak to, the specific platforms that you're currently using and what we are able to do and our compatibility with them. And I would say the same for anyone else, like from Marvin Teresa, sorry about that. If you guys are interested in having a deeper conversation where we can better understand your organization, we can actually do a live demonstration with you, show you how Kairos works, do a quick 20-30 minute call with you. Feel free to let us know. We would love to set those up over the next coming weeks to just be able to really talk to you guys and understand if Kairos may be a fit for something that you guys are utilizing. And we can also go over pricing with you on those calls so that you can see how transparent the pricing is, how affordable it is, and talk to you a little bit more about the organizations that we've been working with on a more deeper level. But yeah, that's what I would say. And I know we only have maybe about like 5, 6 more minutes here before we're gonna wrap up. Um, Siobhan, do you have a link you can just drop in the chat to your calendar so that they can just book with you right there? Hold on one second.
That's what I was grabbing right now to drop in the chat.
Awesome. So yeah, we're gonna just drop the link if you want to set up a meeting, you can. And then we'll also just send up a follow-up email with the recording and all of that, where the link will be included as well. So yeah, you can grab the link here, and we'll also be sending out the recording after for anybody who wants to just go back and replay and look through the presentation. So you'll be able to have the link in that email, excuse me, in that email as well. But yeah, we would love feedback on your thoughts as we're coming to a close here. Like I just mentioned, we're going to drop the link in the chat for anybody who's looking to book a demo for the tool or just have a discovery call to learn a little bit more about Kairos. We can talk through some of the questions that you have if you just have a few questions that are top of mind. Like I said, and we can go over the product live. We can show you guys pricing, any of that stuff that you are looking for. We would love to be able to have those conversations with you and share what we've been doing as well. Is there a list of products of what Kairos offers? So do you mean like a one pager, like kind of like on the platform and all of the different things that it offers? Yes, yes. And so I can take your name right here, and we can send you a personalized email as well with a one pager as well. Okay. Okay, awesome. All right, so I just took down your name so we can send you a follow-up email after. With those one pagers. And so you can get like a quick snapshot on everything. If you guys would like to just book a meeting, like I said, the link is in the chat. But we would love feedback on the presentation today. How did it resonate? Is it feeling like this is something that makes sense for where your organization is at today? And there's possibility to explore what this may look like at your organization. We'd love to hear any feedback before we wrap on how everything went today. Awesome. I just got it and just copied it and pasted it. Thank you for that. Awesome. Thank you, Tracy. Thanks, Marvin. Thank you guys for the feedback.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Marvin. Thank you, Tracy.
Mark or Siobhan, any last words before we hop off here?
Yeah, I was gonna say, again, thank you everyone for joining us today. Kairos is designed to empower all of us to track and better report and manage our data. And when we're saying data, right, we're speaking about all of the families that we're serving, and all the great work that we're doing. And to really help us to showcase that work and the incredible difference I think that we're making in all of our communities, wherever we are across the country. So understanding and managing our data is really important, because it also helps us to secure our funding, demonstrate our success, show accountability, and ultimately allow us to grow in the work that we're doing in the community. So I'm really proud of what we've been able to create with Kairos. I really hope that you all take advantage and schedule a demo and see and learn about Kairos and see if Kairos is a good fit for you and your organization. We put a lot of thought into making it accessible, affordable, easy to adopt and customize. And so it's a really great solution. And again, I hope you all take advantage of the opportunity to learn a little bit more about Kairos, and hopefully you'll become partners in this journey with us as we get better with our data and talk more about all the great work that we're doing collectively across the country.
Yeah, I'll ditto what Mark said. And just another note, here on the team, we really want to help you make greater and stronger impacts in your community, right? And so we do know that that starts with the data, and before the data, we need the system, right? We need that tool that's going to empower us to be able to make that change and say, okay, well, we can see that our clients need more help here, or we can see that we're getting more clients in these areas. And so that is really what we are on this road to get to. And so we are here to help. So definitely book a demo with us, and I have placed the link in the chat. Thank you all so much for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you all. And we'll be following up with everyone who dropped a request in the chat. And we hope you have an amazing and phenomenal week.